Hey guys, bman here. Welcome to today's video. Today we've got an awesome one for you guys. What we've got today is I'm bringing you guys my end game build for Lepic. This is the gun build, end game gun build for all the end game bosses, Gluttony, Frostwalker, Molten Fortress, Swamp Walker, and all of those. This is the build for those. You've got extreme survivability, like you see here. We can tank Gluttony's shots and then go and heal our buddy while we're tanking the Gluttony's shots because of the invincibility state and our high survivability in this build. But at the same time, we're buffing our weapons, so we've got crazy weapon damage and everything. It's just an awesome all-round build for the late game. And in the build, you've also got the immunities in it. So if you're going up against a cold boss, you chuck in ice immunity. If you're going up against the poison one, you chuck in poison immunity. Burn one, you chuck in burn immunity, and things like that. And it's just awesome all round. And this build here works with the other big super weapon builds where we do the 10-second boss wiping. So if you feel like just wiping an earlier solo boss in 10 seconds, you can just swap over to the other module setup that we've got going on, and then you can go in and you can 10-second wipe the pyro boss. So with that said, guys, I hope this helps you out, and if this helps you out, help me out. Smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're not already. Leave me an awesome comment, and let's get straight into all about this build, because it's going to be a really long one. And as you see right here, we just destroyed Gluttony with no problem with this. We took over 100,000 damage, but it didn't matter because this build is awesome. So with that said, let's not muck around and let's get straight into all the details. It's going to be a long one, so make sure you're set up, ready to watch. We're going to start out with our gun build, okay? Now, how this build is you'll see some of those aren't high numbered in that. That is because this build is made to work with the perfect setup for this right here, right? So we'll start out and I'll show you guys this setup. Now, how you can improve this setup, be note that this is actually catalyzed wrong. I would want to change this now since I've made my changes. So I'd want to ultimately catalyze this to make this say it's only cost 8 in this slot, at which point then I'll be able to add in the Firearm Masters Transcendent mod for Ultimat Lepic. Now, that's only what you would do if you had Ultimat Lepic, right? If you don't have Ultimat Lepic, you wouldn't need to worry about that. So for that reason, I want to show the power of this without Ultimat Lepic's Firearm Master. But you can add that into there, and all it will do is make it easier, I guess. You don't need it because you can wipe the 10-second wipe the 4 solo bosses without it, but if you want it, go for it. Now, with that said, when you catalyze this to that eye, that will not make any changes to this other build here. All that will happen is this would now be catalyzed for an eye, which is this one here. So you would put this one over in that slot, you would move this to that slot, this would then cost 8, and this would cost 21. So it wouldn't change the cost of anything here. It would just make it look, it would just be a different one would be catalyzed, right? So this would still work exactly the same build as it is right now. And this one here would be improved just that little bit by this only costing 8. And then you would be able to fit this into here if you wanted to do that. But you don't need to. If you don't want to, you can just do exactly what we've got here, and this works perfectly. So with that said, let's get over and get on to this build. So we're going to start out with this build that I'm running right here. So what we have for this build is the gun build that you just seen in the intro up against Gluttony. Now, how this is done is this is made from this build here. So I first make this build because this is the first build you're going to use. You're going to use this build first to take on the first 4 bosses. So let's just go over that part first. How this is built and why it's built in that way. So how this will work is you will use this build and you will take on 1, 2, 3, 4, these first 4 bosses, you will be able to use the build to instantly pretty much delete them on their first phase without going into immunity sets. You'll be able to delete them in under 20 seconds, right? All 4 of these 4 bosses. Now, once you get to Swamp Walker, you'll struggle to be able to 1-phase them, and you'll have to 2-phase them. So at that point, the build that you use to 1-phase all of these is no longer that viable, okay? So from this point, you need to swap to the gun build. And this point for taking on all of these, for this build that you used for taking these out, does not require you to have any gun. So that's why you will use this build first up until this point, and while you're at this point where you're able to wipe these so easily, you can, from this point is when you farm up the enduring legacy. Then once when you're working farming on these bosses and getting everything you need to get the enduring legacy unlocked and powered up to be usable and be a good top end gun, finish leveling it up. Once you've got that, then you swap to your gun build, right? So then once you've got your enduring legacy ready and you swap to your gun build, then at that point you go along and you're ready to go and take on these other bosses. Don't be that guy that comes in trying to be carried by your squad, coming in and taking these bosses on with the build that you're only meant to use to take on these. You don't have the survivability and you're only going to hinder your team. Do it properly. Once you get to this point, go out and get yourself to work on the gun and swap to the gun build. So with that said, that's why it is the way it is, and that's why I've built it the way I have. We had to keep in mind that you have already built a certain build up to this point, and then we want to make a gun build that's working in with what we already have. So with that said, let's get in and explain it. So I'll show at the end the gameplay of the build, taking on this build here, going through and wiping out all 4 of the first solo bosses, right? Simple as, easy as. And then after that point, you swap to this build. And I will also show gameplay of this taking out the Swamp Walker, and I'll show some gameplay of this taking out the Frost Walker as well, okay? So I've already shown some with the Gluttony at the start, so you guys can see that. So I don't want to stretch this out to a 4-hour long video, so I'll add in just that much. But with that said, I'll add in some gameplay so you guys can see how this plays as well. Oh, editing bman here. Hey guys, I realized while I'm editing that adding the gameplay and at the end of the videos makes the video right up to over 40-minute long video. So instead of adding the gameplay at the end of the video, I'm just going to put the gameplay together in a separate video, and I'll pin a link to that video in a pinned comment of this video so that anybody that wants to see the gameplay can go over and look at that, because there's lots of people that'll be happy with the build without actually seeing all the gameplay. But those that want to see the gameplay, it's there for you, and it will be linked in a pinned comment. So now you guys understand why I've built it in the way I've built it. So we built this first, right? So that's why these all have been catalyzed in this way. So now we want to build to be able to go into the guns. So we had to get the power unit, because what this does is this supercharges our weapon. Firearm attack increased by 52%. Now this is super good, because if later game when you're going in with other party members, other descendants, if you get someone say Enzo into your team who's buffing you your crit rate, suddenly you are the most highest DPS gun descendant in the match, because you're getting crazy crit rate, but you're also getting crazy firearm attack buffs as well. So your gun is now doing crazy damage. So that's why it's so awesome. So with that said, we're buffing for that, right? Now, because that is our buff for our gun, we want that active all the time. So we've got a duration to try and get the duration to the cooldown. So as soon as this finishes, we just reactivate it, right? So we've got it up all the time. So that's why you've got skill cooldowns, and then here we've got skill cooldown, skill cooldown, skill cooldown, and skill cooldown. Then we've got duration to extend the duration. Then we've got our survivability, right? So we've got our health and we've got some defense. Then we've got this for our extra firearm attack when we go low health, and this is just extra helps with the damage, incoming damage multiplier so more defense, right? Then we've got this slot here that we use for our immunities. So if we're going up against Pyro or the Molten Fortress, we put this one, heat release, in there, right? So that we've got burn immunity. If we're going up against, say, the Gluttony or Dead Bride, we put this one in here. So we got frostbite immunity, so that when they freeze us, they can't just freeze us still and then continue hitting us, because that's the thing that kills me in Gluttony when I was not running this, is Gluttony would hit you once, then you get frozen still, and then she hits you, it will hit you multiple times. Well, this stops that happening. And same thing with, like, say you're going up against the Swamp Walker, you'll put poison immunity in here, okay? So you've got really good survivability, we've got high defense, so if you see over here, if we come over, we've got a high defense, we've got high health, and we're also getting high firearm attack. So we're also getting firearm attack from the set that we've got here. So we've got this Annihilator set that you get from farming the Devour, okay? What you'll be able to do with your, before you get into using your guns, okay? So you'll have this set before you get to swap to your gun setup, right? So that is the full setup that we're running for our gun setup for later on. So you've got your survivability with your health, your defense, and your survivability, and then we've got all the buffs for our guns that just stack up with when you're in with Enzo or something like that, that's giving you good crit rate, then it just stacks up even more. Now, with that said, because this is a gun build, you've got utility things. So what I do is often I'll just run a tamer, not as my gun that I'm shooting with. My tamer I run as a utility, so I'll have utility things on it like this, so it can pick up ammo when I run over different types of ammo, and it has a higher amount of ammo, right? So I have it over 2 guns sometimes, so it just depends what I'm running. So normally I'll be running this right here, right? So we'll run Enduring Legacy, and I'll have another weapon here, and whenever I need ammo, I'll swap and pull out this weapon, and then I'll run over the ammo, and then I'll swap back to this weapon, and I'll only use this weapon in my hands while I'm picking up ammo, and that's all it's for. It's an ammo utility gun, right? Then all my damage that I do is coming from this. This is my gun setup, and this is where I'm at so far with this. Again, it's not completed, it's not finished, it's just where I'm at this point, but it's enough for me to be able to go on and kill all the bosses in the game. So this setup is good enough for me at this point. So I'm running this thing right here, which is HP heal modifier and some skill cost. You can get better ones than this. For the gun build, it doesn't really matter for your reactor. You can go duration and some cooldowns would probably be better, okay? But it doesn't really matter too much because you're not using your skills. But when you're doing when you swap over to the firearm master with this build here, this is when your reactor does matter. So with our reactor for that build, we're using this right here, and this is the setup that we're running for that. So you see we have this gun in here, and this is the gun we're running with that reactor, because then I get the bonus. But the big thing for this here is that it has that additional skill attack when attacking Colossus. You can go for critical hit damage as well with that, or you can go for skill cost, and then you can have a chance of getting more balls out, okay? So with that said, we've got duration on this set, which helps us also get more of those balls out to shoot more fireballs with this set. So with that said, guys, this right here is the firearm master one that we've gone over. We've got a catalyst in here to make this give us extra. Now, shock punch, it's just whatever you've got really for that. That you can use the other grappling hook modifying ones and all sorts like that, guys. I just find it doesn't make that much of a difference at this stage for me to worry about upgrading those, so I'm just using what I've got fully upgraded at this point. So that's why that's in there. But yes, if you guys have got these upgraded, go for it, throw those in. They will make it better for you and easier for you. So with that said, here you see on this build that we're doing the boss wipes, these are the stats. And finally, we have the mobbing build, but this is more just muck around with it. It's not too useful, because if you're doing dungeons or something at the end of dungeons, this build can kind of be bad, because when you're using this, if a boss goes into the shielded states where they got to do certain things for their shields and that, this can't bring them out of that shielded state. So then this will end up going into cooldown because you'll have to actually use your guns. So this isn't that great, but it's cool to play around with if you guys want to have infinite amount of your super weapon and never run out. This is a pretty cool way to do it, and you always have your mana coming in because you get your money back from critting. This has a real high crit rate and it does a lot of damage, but as I said, it's not much useful for dungeons because of that point that you're going to have to put it away at points because it's not the best for some certain situations. Some situations it's just useless in, but other situations it's really good and really cool. So if you want to play around with a build for that, this is really good and it works with this whole build and works in with it and everything, but it's nothing too awesome to recommend, and the other builds you can just use anyway. So it's not needed, but it's just a cool extra, hey, use this. So with that said, let's finish this part by showing you guys a bit more on what to do on how to play these. So for this firearm master one, when you're shooting out your balls, make sure that the gun that you have out when you activate your super weapon has these modules on it, the fire rate up, and it does make sure that it doesn't have any modules that are slowing its fire rate on it, okay? And this one here, if you've got this, make sure that once you pull the trigger after you activating your super weapon, you don't let go of it and you don't tap it for each shot. You just hold the trigger so that this builds up and it gets faster and faster, okay? So that's how it's done. So with that said, let's get in and show you guys exactly that. So you'll activate X roll and then you'll just hold the trigger, okay, and you will not let go of the trigger, and then it'll tick up and then it will just get faster and faster and faster as long as you were holding the weapon that has this on it, okay? And make sure you've got the base fire rate as well. So with that said, that's how you will do that. You'll activate your B, but then you'll wait for a bit, but don't worry, your B actually lasts for a long time, as a long duration on it. Wait for your mana to regenerate up and then activate your X, roll and hold the trigger. So keep firing, just keep holding the trigger until you've shot all your shots out, okay? So that's how you use this bossing part to 10-second wipe the bosses. You aim at their weak points on the bosses and stuff like that. If you hit weak points with the fireball, it helps stopping them going into immunities because you don't build up their rage bar as fast if you hit weak points. So keep that in mind and stuff like that. That's how you use that one. Let's go over the gun build because you need to know how you run this one too. So how you run this one here is you won't have to worry about mana much. Look, it comes back pretty fast and you don't use much. But what you're using is you're using your B ability, your second ability, to buff your damage. So what you're doing is you're using your B ability, you're shooting your gun out and you're keeping an eye on your ability for when it comes available. You're shooting out until it comes available, you're reactivating it while it's available. It will not stack. If you have things like mental focus on your gun, activating it mid firing will not stop the mental focus and remove the stacks. You'll be able to activate this buff and keep your mental focus stacks. Another cool thing, as soon as he puts the mag in, you can cancel the reload by activating the buff, and now we've cancelled our reload, faster reload, and we're instantly shooting buff gun bullets. Then we can buff it again and we can go again. So it's simple as that, and that's how you'll use it, and you'll always be using buffed guns. Simple as, easy as, guys. So with that said, let's get in and we'll show you some gameplay of this full thing going out. It's, as you said, you solo these ones and you 10-second wipe them, and then I'll go on and I'll show you the gameplay with the gun wiping of these two here. Editing B-Man back again. Hey guys, I'm going to put the gameplay, I'll remind you, in a separate video so that I don't stretch out this video too much, because there's going to be a lot of people who don't need to see that. So with that said, check the pinned comment if you want the link to the video that has the gameplay. Thank you guys for watching my videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Smash that like button for me, subscribe if you're not already, and keep being awesome. B-Man, out.